Ireland represents the last European landfall before the massive Atlantic Ocean stretches 3,000 miles to North America. To the east lies its powerful neighbor, England. Throughout the centuries, the history of these two nations has been intertwined. 26 counties in the south form the Republic of Ireland, and 6 counties in the north are still a part of the United Kingdom. Ireland has a population of 5 million, more than 3.5 million in the south, and nearly 1.5 million in the north. Both Dublin, the capital of the Republic, and Belfast, the capital of Northern Ireland, lie on the east coast. The sea has played a vital role in the story of Ireland. It brought Viking invaders from northern Europe in the 9th century, Anglo-Normans from England in the 12th century, and waves of English and Scottish settlers in the 17th century to displace the native population. There is evidence that men lived on this island as far back as 6000 BC. Some of the most dramatic remains of these early peoples are to be found in the Boyne Valley to the northwest of Dublin. The tomb at Newgrange is one of the oldest man-made structures in the world. It was built more than 3,000 years before the birth of Christ and is older than some of the Egyptian pyramids. A stone passage runs into the heart of the mound, and an ingenious roof box over the door allows the sun to shine into the passageway just once a year, during the winter solstice. Little is known of the history of these early peoples, but there are stories. In Ireland, there are always stories. They are said to have practiced magic, and when invaders came to oust them, they used their art to survive as fairy people underground. The invaders were the Celts, a wandering, warlike, artistic people who had undertaken the arduous journey from Central Europe. The modern population are their descendants, and their creative spirit and love of music survives to this day. Dublin is a modern, energetic city, but the old traditions are flourishing. Dublin was founded by Viking invaders in the 9th century on the banks of the River Liffey. During the 17th and 18th centuries, English influence became established in Ireland. The Custom House is one of the great architectural legacies from the era of Anglo-Irish rule. In 1916, the Irish rose up against British rule. Ironically, the English Parliament had been on the point of giving Ireland some autonomy. The Home Rule Bill was delayed by the outbreak of the First World War. Frustrated nationalists organized a rebellion centered in Dublin, known as the Easter Rising. A number of strategic buildings were occupied, and the Irish flag was raised for the first time over the General Post Office in O'Connell Street, the city's main thoroughfare. Many of the city landmarks are still strongly associated with the Rising. The Shelbourne Hotel was the site for one of the first drafts of the Irish Constitution. The hotel overlooks St. Stephen's Green, the scene of military action during the rebellion. Dublin has produced some of the world's greatest writers and intellectuals, many of them educated at Trinity College. The college was founded in 1592 and is one of the oldest universities in Western Europe. St. Patrick's Cathedral. The cathedral was built in the 12th century on the site where St. Patrick is said to have baptized converts in the year 450 AD. According to local legend, the patron saint of Ireland struck the ground with his staff and water gushed forth from the earth. Since that day, the site has been a place of worship. Many ancient folk instruments are used today by Irish musicians, but the queen of them all, and the one adopted as Ireland's national symbol, is the harp.
This is actually the sound box. Now, it's a very important part of the harp. If you like, supports the strings and all the hardware. And the sound is obviously generated by plucking the string, but the sound is actually amplified by this particular box here.
The legacy of the Celts is not confined only to words and music. They also handed down to their descendants the fastest field team game in the world. Hurling takes its name from the crooked stick carved from ash that is used to control the ball. Dublin is surrounded by the rural East Midlands, the counties of Longford, Louth, Meath, Westmeath, Kildare, Laois and Wicklow. The wild, gentle beauty of the Wicklow Mountains can be experienced just a few miles south of the capital. The region is sparsely populated, the pace of life slow. Ireland's love affair with the horse has at its heart the Curragh in County Kildare. This is the course on which the Irish Derby, St. Leger and Guineas are run. The counties of the southeast comprise Carlow, Tipperary, Kilkenny, Wexford and Waterford. Sandy beaches and rolling farmland characterize the southern coastline in County Waterford. The ruins of probably the oldest Christian settlement in Ireland rise above the beach at Ardmore. The unusual stone carvings on the cathedral wall were fashioned about 1,000 years ago. The 97-foot round tower is one of the most perfect in the country. They were used to store valuables and as watchtowers to warn of a Viking attack. The city of Waterford was a Viking stronghold for many centuries. Today, it is a lively port and the economic mainstay of the southeast. The name Waterford has become associated throughout the world with the city's famous crystal. The original factory was opened in 1783, a few miles from the modern site. Cutting is a skill that takes years of rigorous training to perfect. Each incision must be exactly the right depth. The Rock of Cashel, towering majestically above the Tipperary plains, is the most dramatic man-made site in Ireland. Seat of the ancient High Kings of Munster, The rock is a magnificent complex of proud and lofty ruins. Ireland was once ruled by hundreds of warring kings. They, in turn, were governed from Cashel by the High Kings. St. Patrick arrived at Cashel in the 5th century and wasted no time in converting the king. The famous southwest, Cork and Kerry, includes some of Ireland's most spectacular scenery. The magnificent Ring of Kerry winds for 110 miles along the coast of the Iveira Peninsula. Inland, McKillicuddy's Reeks, Ireland's highest mountains, stretch proudly towards the sky. This part of Ireland is one of the most untouched by the rigours of the modern world. The lush green pastures rise out of the mist like a land that time has forgotten. This part of Kerry is rich in historical remains. Snaking across the cliffs, there are over 400 of these mortarless stone dwellings known as beehive huts. Many date from the pre-Christian era. The Gallerus Oratory is one of the most perfect examples of early Irish building in the country and is thought to date from the 8th century. Dingle is a warm and very Irish place, one of the few remaining outposts where the native tongue is spoken as a first language. The beauty of the lakes is the essence of Kerry. Light playing on water, sudden rainbows arching through the clouds. Ice-age glaciers melted some 10,000 years ago, but not before they had gouged out great valley floors and scattered huge rocks across the landscape. The lively little town of Killarney, its brightly painted shops and pubs. Killarney was a hamlet until the 18th century, when a far-sighted local magnate, Lord Kenmare, thought there might be money to be made from tourism. He was right. Killarney is thriving. Irish charm, otherwise known as the gift of the gab, can supposedly be acquired at Blarney Castle in County Cork. The 16th century owner of the castle was an expert at flattery and excuses. He was accused by Queen Elizabeth I of being full of Blarney talk. The incident created a new word and a legend.
I can't go anymore.
Kissing the Blarney Stone is believed to impart an easy eloquence to all who are prepared to undergo the physical rigors of hanging upside down over the castle battlements. The castle is just 4 miles north of Cork, the second largest city in the Irish Republic and Dublin's friendliest rival. The city stands on what was originally marshland created by the River Lee. All the main streets and thoroughfares of modern Cork were once canals and waterways. In the 19th century, the city achieved great wealth, principally from the export of fresh local butter to the best tables in Europe. For the rural poor, however, the 19th century brought one of the greatest tragedies in Irish history. At that time, the peasants' staple diet was the potato. When the harvest failed, the poor starved. A potato blight in 1845 destroyed the crop and led to what is now known as the Great Famine. When it was over, 1 million people had died of starvation, and more than 1 million had set off mainly for America in squalid, cramped ships. While crossing the Atlantic, they braved the most desperate conditions, hoping to find a better world across the sea. The principal counties of the Shannon region are Clare, Limerick, and Offaly. The area takes its name from the mighty river that snakes through the Midwest. The Shannon, in its many moods, is the lifeblood of the west of Ireland. The combined length of the river and its tributaries is well over 1,000 miles. Much of the land in County Offaly is bog. For the rural poor, the rich springy turf was a source of fuel for many centuries. The peat was cut into blocks and allowed to dry until it was ready to keep the home fires burning. It is still cut by hand in this way in the more remote parts of the country. The flat central plains of Offaly are a dramatic contrast to the towering majesty of the Clare coastline. The cliffs of Moher soar mightily above the pounding Atlantic, apparently indifferent to the ocean's great power. The cliffs extend for some 5 miles and form one of the grandest and most breathtaking coastlines in Europe. Inland lies a strange and lonely landscape known as the Burren. Stark grey limestone terraces snake across the landscape as if carved by some alien hand. This part of the country is a land of castles. There are more than 900 in the counties of Clare, Limerick, and Galway. Some, such as Dromoland Castle, have been turned into luxury hotels. The west includes the counties of Mayo, Roscommon, and Galway. Connemara is the heartland of the Irish-speaking areas known as the Gaeltacht, and one of the most wild and rugged regions in Ireland. Today, the vast lonely lakes, wild moorland, and brooding mountains are a haven for nature lovers and a paradise for fishermen. Beneath the lake's glistening water, salmon and trout are fighting for a bit of space. In past centuries, the people in this part of Ireland depended on a unique style of boat, known as the hooker, for the transportation of peat and livestock. There are no working boats left, but a restoration program has saved these unusual vessels from extinction. They are being rebuilt by local people keen to preserve their heritage. In the summer, the distinctive sails can be seen again in the waters off the Connemara coast. Across Galway Bay lie the ancient islands of Ireland, home to many early Christian and pre-Christian remains. The Dún Aengus fort on Inishmore is one of Europe's most dramatic prehistoric monuments. But it is believed to be at least 3,000 years old. Arran is geologically an extension of the barren limestone rock of the Burren in County Clare. Over the centuries, the islanders have literally manufactured the soil out of sand and seaweed to grow meager crops for livestock. Like Connemara, there is no shortage of stones. Fishing is the main industry, and traditional boats known as currachs are still commonly used. The canoe-style boats are made of tarred canvas stretched over wooden frames. They have been used on these islands for centuries. The isolated position of the islands has preserved a traditional way of life. Many of the early Christian monastic movements began here, and the links with the past are still strong. In the northwest of the Republic are the counties of Leitrim, Monaghan, Cavan, Donegal, and Sligo. The Sligo landscape is one of stark and striking drama. This is Yeats' country. The poet William Butler Yeats and his artist brother Jack immortalized this land in the printed word and on canvas. Exposed to the full force of the Atlantic on three sides, the coastline is wild and rugged. Malin Head is the most northerly point in Ireland, though it is politically part of the south. The way of life here is rural. There are no cities or large towns. One of the main sources of income is the manufacture of high-quality tweed. The people are especially friendly. Irish is still spoken, and the old ways survive. Donegal was deeply affected by the Great Famine of the 1840s. Many people died or emigrated, and the population has not yet recovered. The 6 counties of Northern Ireland are Antrim, Down, Armagh, Derry, Tyrone, and Fermanagh. They remained part of the United Kingdom in 1922, and the Irish Free State was established. The little town of Pettigo was literally split down the middle. Border follows the river through the center of the town. They say it's full of bilingual fish. On the Donegal side, there's a statue commemorating the deaths of 4 Irish nationalists in 1922. And on the Fermanagh side, an oak tree commemorates a British victory during the Crimean War. The friction in Northern Ireland between the Protestant majority and the Catholic minority has resulted in some communal strife. Though this problem remains unresolved, the negative images are largely dispelled by the overwhelming warmth and hospitality of the people, and the great natural beauty of the region. The city of Armagh was the seat of the Ulster kings for some 6 centuries. Today, it is home to the Irish leaders of both the Protestant Church of Ireland and the Roman Catholic Church. The city of Derry, also known as Londonderry, is situated on the River Foyle, surrounded by rolling countryside. In 1614, the Guilds created the last walled city in Europe. The 20-foot walls, complete with cannons, can still be seen today. The magnificent north coast of Derry, with its long golden beaches, Giant's Causeway, one of the wonders of the natural world, is the most startling sight along the Antrim coast. Some 37,000 geometric basalt columns march in unison towards the ocean. The causeway was the result of volcanic lava cooling some 60 million years ago. The rope bridge at nearby Carrick-a-Reed. The fragile bridge sways across a 60-foot chasm above an 80-foot drop into the sea below. Those who have the courage to endure the crossing are rewarded with beautiful views along the Antrim coast. The celebrated 9 glens of Antrim have inspired poetry, prose, and legends that have spread word of their beauty throughout the world. The queen of them all is Glen Arif, a vast sweeping valley carved out in the Ice Age. On the valley floor, giant waterfalls pound precipitous rock faces, plunging into the swirling peaty water below. Strangford Lough in County Down was given its name by invading Norsemen. It means violent ford. On the east shore of Strangford Lough, along the Ards Peninsula, is Mount Stewart, the former home of the Marquesses of Londonderry. The fairy tale gardens were designed by Edith, Lady Londonderry, and include an array of styles from all parts of the globe. Belfast is one of the youngest capital cities in the world and has experienced some of the fastest growth in history. The Industrial Revolution of the 19th century brought an explosion in the city's wealth, and most of the lavish architecture dates from this era, including the domineering City Hall and the elegant Queen's University. On the outskirts of the city are the magnificent Parliament buildings at Stormont, set in 300 acres of fine grounds. Built at the beginning of the 20th century, the massive classical building was a gift from the British government and was opened by George V. Ireland, a place of heart-wrenching beauty, where complex layers of time and history have left their indelible marks on the landscape and the people. Ireland, where the fiery Celtic spirit is expressed in poetry, music, and dance. And where there are no strangers, only future friends.